Now, one of the games that snuck up on me this year was Journey to the Savage Planet, and it's a hard one to really categorize because it's trying to do a couple of things, and it does them well enough. It's got a little bit of the humor of things like Outer Worlds, like a world of capitalism, libertarianism gone mad, where you're working for a company to colonize all these different planets, and so your ship lands on this particular world. You get out, like you try and explore, and you create things as you go. So you're basically colonizing the world, but it doesn't have any ongoing like crafting in any meaningful way or anything like that. But what it does have is basic crafting. So, gadgets, inventions, those kind of silly little things. But it is like one self-contained world. Realistically, there is like the where you start in the map, you can see the end of the map. You can see basically the last part, and it's just about going through all the different things, discovering the next MacGuffin, discovering the next, like all these different things to get to the point that you need to be. So it's a little bit Metroidy because you have to scan stuff and then you get like a laser tether and all this. So it tries to do the Metroid Prime thing as well, but then it's not even doing that the same way that Metroid Prime does. And then you add on to that the kind of the rudimentary combat and the silly, I wouldn't say they're necessarily physics puzzles, but some of the things they expect you to do kind of have that kind of sort of silliness to them. And in and of itself, it is a good little self-contained experience. And probably the nicest thing that I can say about the game is that I enjoyed the time I spent with it. It's not inherently something that's going to stand out. It's not something that I'm going to remember going forward, or it doesn't quite hit the comedic highs of Outer Worlds, or even have the kind of the nuance of the characters. Though that said, I still think Outer Worlds was nowhere near Fallout New Vegas on that front. But I think what it does solidly. And I wonder if in today's world that is enough. I guess the one thing that really decides whether that's enough is whether you're paying full price for it or not. And it sounds awful to discuss art in the lens of how much you paid for it, but I think it's a relevant discussion. So I figured I'd bring Matt and Donald on to discuss exactly that. And I guess the main thing to keep in mind with Journey to the Savage Planet is it is not a full price title. It's a half price title. You don't pay the full amount for it. So therefore, is it okay to expect less out of it?
It seems like a product of a bygone era where we used to have, before everything became stratified to a hyper-specific demographic, we had the B game, like that long-lost genre of game that you sort of like discovered.
The Switch has brought back for my money.
Yeah, and a genre that the Steam has sort of helped cultivate just a little bit. But back, say, even in the Xbox 360 generation, you had games that weren't quite full price and weren't quite full AAA production values, but still were good products in and of themselves. I think explicitly of that shooting game where you travel backwards and forwards in time, Singularity.
The
Singularity
Activision one, Singularity.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was a great game, but it wasn't full price yet.
Yeah, and that was the ideal sort of B game, and it sounds like Journey to the Savage Planet, it kind of fits that bill quite nicely.
Yeah, it is. And I know, Matt, you discussed the idea of picking it up and playing it, and I don't want to dissuade you, but did I? I worry that maybe because you can play co-op, and I can see how it could be fun co-op, but by me saying, that it's not a fully fleshed out experience, you're not going to get your thing, has that really discouraged your thought process on it, or is it, yeah?
I think I guess it kind of sets expectations for the player. They'll look at this game and go, oh, it's only X amount, it's only half price compared to a fully fledged AAA game. I'll go back to play. I'm a huge fan at the moment of B games, or what's known as AA games at the moment, where you have a lot of these games that fall in that niche of Japanese games, French games, a lot of games that are being developed in Europe that aren't particularly AAA, but not enough to necessitate indie game prices. I mean, I remember the time where we were spending absurd amounts of money on buying games like Braid because there was nothing like it on the market at that point. But because of its saturation and things like that, there are avenues where you have to cut the price down a little bit to make games that feel more like. I feel that Journey to the Savage Planet feels more like a passion project and made by, ex-Assassin's Creed developers where they're actually making a game they want to make. And I think that's probably a more attractive price point. But I'm waiting for the sequel, Journey to the Savage Garden.
Well, they fly to the moon and back at that one. But I guess you do bring up a really good point regarding pricing. And I think that's something that I've learned, particularly on the Switch lately, is that there's kind of 4 layers of pricing. There's sub $7, there's over $7 but less than $15, there's more than $15 but less than $30, and then there's $30 to kind of $60.
And there's also Breath of the Wild does not change price at all, despite being out for 3 years.
Once or
that's
twice
just
it has,
Nintendo there.
Yeah,
That's the-
and
that's
then,
the,
then there's
that's the
Nintendo,
Nintendo tier.
Yes.
which is like, yeah, and I guess the thing with that is that Nintendo always kind of keep the games at price. Some games like Splatoon, you pay once, every new gun is included, every new map rotation, all
Every
that stuff.
patch too.
Such good value, like you know, so it is that thing, but. Like I think that there is still that stigma attached to looking at the prices of a game to decide whether it's or what the quality is going to be like.
I'd say like we've kind of returned to the point where non-$100 games are looked at with sort of a raised eyebrow. For a minute, if an indie developer were to put their game over $10 US, they would be laughed out of town
Yeah.
because there was just that period where the mixture of Xbox Live Arcade and the App Store, where every app
heyday of
is
Xbox Live Arcade, yeah.
99 cents, like that significantly devalued the worth of an indie game. So when I distinctly remember when Gone Home came out for $15 US, maybe it was $20
Yeah.
for a hour-long 90-minute walking simulator,
Yeah.
people were outraged at
Yeah.
that pricing.
I think we also have like a bone to pick with some of the publishers as well. Some
Yeah.
publishers kind of go a little bit over the deep end.
Yeah.
A lot of publishers like Focus Home Interactive have that they hit that sweet spot of this isn't particularly a full-priced, full-budget game,
Yeah.
but we're going to price it at a point where people will kind of go, you know what, I'll give this a crack. We'll see
Yeah.
how we go.
Yeah, and I think Nintendo, the problem with them is that the Switch, everything's a little bit overpriced compared to what it is on other platforms. But you're playing for the portability. I get it. But I think you're right, Don. I think there's nothing inherently wrong with being a different price, but people are starting to get a little bit more wary after all the Steam debacles and things like that.
Not to mention the what's called the massive disruptor that is free-to-play games.
Yeah.
Like it has.
Play
Like-
Shadow Legends,
Yeah.
made Shadow Legends.
Hashtag play Dauntless.
yeah. Having said that, like I say this, and yet like people are willing to pay $15, $20 a quarter to buy into the battle passes.
Yeah.
And yet and people are more willing to accept a wider range of games. Not to mention games, as I said, are much more hyper specific nowadays. So developers can sort of raise the price to that level that's above $5 impulse
They
buy,
know what
but
they're gonna
below
get, yeah.
full retail and still be happy with
Yeah.
the transaction at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right there, Donald.